Hi, my name's Carrie Exton. I'm a policy analyst at the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. I work in the Statistics Directorate at the OECD in a team that works on developing measures of progress, so better measures for better lives. Welcome to this CIVITAS e-learning course. Some of my work is about developing better measures for better lives, so thinking about the impact that policies can have on people's well-being. I hope that over the course of this work you can also think about some ways in which your work can lead to better lives in your community. So the Better Life Index is an interactive web tool, so it's a website that people can visit. It has lots of information from our well-being databases. But the idea behind the tool is that people have the opportunity to tell us what matters most in their lives. So we have a framework for measuring well-being with 11 different dimensions, and visitors to the website are invited to score those dimensions in terms of what matters most to them. So we're talking about things like health, education, life satisfaction, environmental quality, community, civic engagement, personal safety. So there's a range of different elements of life, and the idea is that visitors to the website can rank those elements in terms of what matters most to them. The website will then calculate an index, a Better Life Index for each individual visitor to the website that then shows you how different OECD countries perform on that index. So one of the big challenges in terms of well-being and its use in policy is trying to understand how the different components of well-being interrelate and the relative importance that people place on those different components. So there's a big demand for trying to understand the net impact of a policy on people's well-being. So we've got all these different dimensions. How do we add those up? This isn't just a statistical question. This is a question of values. It's a question of what matters to people. So we, as sort of a statistics directorate, don't feel that we can answer that question. The idea behind the Better Life Index is actually that we give that question to people. We say what matters most to you. They have an opportunity to then rank the different components of well-being and generate their own index. So it's an important tool for communicating about our work. It's an important opportunity for people to tell us what matters most to them. So there are sort of two different types of results that you get in the Better Life Index. The first result is about the performance of the country itself. So using all of our objective and subjective data, you get a ranking for countries. But one of the other features of the website is that we actually collect responses from people who agree to share their data with us. That enables us to look at how different people rank the different parts of well-being. So how they decide what matters most to them, we collect data from them. Some of the interesting results so far is that actually all components of well-being seem to matter, but some seem to matter slightly more than others on this ranking. So for example, we see that things like health, education, and subjective well-being are usually ranked sort of slightly higher. Components like community and civic engagement generally attract slightly lower importance ratings, but overall there's sort of it's quite clear signal to us that all of these things matter to people. We also have to be quite careful with this data because we know that the quality of the data is not hugely high. It's not a representative sample of people. We're getting a particular type of person that comes to visit the OECD website. We know that there are differences in terms of the gender balance and age balance that means that these data don't map perfectly to countries. We're quite certain that other characteristics will be different too, so things like education levels, probably income levels. So we don't want to go too far in emphasizing these results because of the limitations of the data, but it's nonetheless interesting, and it's an opportunity to engage people in debate. It's an opportunity for people to look at the scores in their countries and decide whether that feels right for them. So I think my advice to urban mobility professionals and anyone involved in policy making in this area would be that our wellbeing framework offers a way of thinking about the different parts of people's lives that can be impacted by policy. So this can be useful both in terms of trying to decide what the priorities should be in terms of strategic planning. So understanding, for example, areas of comparative strength and weakness, trying to understand which communities are doing better or worse across the different measures and therefore where to sort of target your policy making. But the framework is also something that can be used to try and understand the impacts that policies are having. So when designing a particular intervention, you'll be thinking also about how to evaluate the impacts of that intervention. And again, the wellbeing framework is sort of a guide, if you like, for trying to think about the different elements of a person's life that could be impacted. So trying to go beyond simply the economic impact, but to actually look at the impact on people's lives and in their communities. So in terms of the elements of our framework that are most relevant to people working on urban mobility, I think actually the framework itself is really very relevant. There are a number of different areas. So we can look at things like air quality, water quality, so some of our environmental quality indicators, personal safety, so looking at people's fear of walking on the streets alone at night, for example, is one of the indicators that we have. We also look at things like the assault rate and the homicide rate. Social connectivity is really important. So one of the indicators that we have is around support and the extent to which people feel that they have support in times of trouble. Obviously, urban mobility fosters connections between people and communities. So having some sense of the impact on social connectivity is really important. Of course, some of the classic measures like access to jobs, access to education, housing indicators, they were all sort of in there as a given. But there are actually sort of a broader set of indicators that we can think about when we're thinking about quality of people's lives. So I hope you've been inspired by this CIVITAS e-learning course. One of the goals of our work is to try and develop better measures for better lives. Hopefully, sustainable mobility can lead to better lives in your work too.